You might be asking, Emily, why are you about to spend probably quite a lot of time making a paper mache bit of tack to put around your bedroom light switch cover instead of doing the job you've been meaning to do and wanting to do for the last few months? And to that I would say that A, I'm actually doing this in order to avoid starting on that big project because I'm feeling kind of tired, and B, doing up your home should be something to be savoured and enjoyed. And if you're not in the mood to sand a staircase, or if you're feeling burnt out, maybe you're better off changing focus to something that feels more attainable, is lower stakes, and serves no other purpose other than pointless, joyful decoration. And ultimately, that's what this video is about. I explained in my last video that I really want to take you along for the ride of me making these projects and try to explain the different inspirations that I'm pulling from when I'm making something, which as it turns out for this project is quite a lot. So prepare for a slightly long-winded intro featuring this virtual mood board that I'm going to be pinning things to as I talk. Very excited about this. As you can see, the light switch that I have in my bedroom is just a basic white plastic light switch, and I'm happy enough with it. It switches my light both on and off, and I have no desire to rip it off the wall and chuck it in the bin, because that's just wasteful. That being said, I am an imperfect person and I'm not immune to marketing. And for the last couple of years, I've been seeing more and more examples of fun, interesting light switches online, which have piqued my interest and really made me want to jazz up at least one of the boring light switches in my flat. I really love these vintage style ceramic light switches that I always see popping up on Pinterest. I think everything about them is just beautiful, except for the price. In particular, I really love this color combo, and I've had this pinned for ages because it was what I was going to originally draw inspiration from when I first started the first version of this project over a year ago, which is right here. As you can see, I never got to the painting stages with it because it is just awful, and it was one of those projects that just seemed doomed to fail from the start. The idea was to make like an extra chunky version of one of these. Think this light switch mixed with these plates, and this thing was just supposed to be a base to work on top of. I had to abandon it once I realized that I'd done too many layers of paper mache on the inside and now it was too small to fit the light switch. Coming back to this project a year later, I initially thought I'd just have another go at this original plan. But when I came to start, I realised I didn't actually have any enthusiasm to make this thing, which for something as silly as this is a surefire reason not to make it. If I'm not going to enjoy it and it's not necessary anyway, why would I do it? So I've taken a step back and I've been trying to think about what it is that I actually want to make. I need to remember that this is a low stakes project. It's small, it's cheap, and it's purely decorative. So I can let it be led by what seems like the most fun to me, which is an exciting prospect for a new project. So far, all we've got pinned up here is that original ceramic light switch that I would still like to somewhat reference in this new design. And now for a complete side tangent. I went to visit Charleston farmhouse in East Sussex over the summer, which if you can get to, I would highly recommend visiting if you like interior designy things. It's just a wonderful place. It was the country home of the Bloomsbury Group artists Vanessa Bell and Duncan Grant during the First World War, and now it's preserved as it was when those artists lived there. And it's just filled with the most interesting, non-contrived objects, furniture, artwork, most of which were made by the people who lived there and their friends and contemporaries. So it's just very interesting to look around. The inspiration is literally everywhere in that place. It really hammered home the difference for me between seeing art displayed in like a traditional gallery setting versus art displayed in a home, and made it so clear that I really prefer the latter. I loved the folksy character of everything and all of the muted colours. It all just felt like the perfect balance between somewhere familiar and homely versus somewhere unique and surprising. And it was fun to see that they also liked having body parts on the wall too, as I do. It also had a really beautiful walled garden, which I think has inspired much of my recent eBay browsing and has reinvigorated my interest in florals, which I think is another thing that I want to bring into this project. So yeah, visiting Charleston House really reaffirmed me in my quest to fill my own home with unique objects and to use it as a place to experiment, to express myself, and to tell my own stories. Speaking of which, for my final reference for this project, I have a quick personal story. Once upon a time, I was a young, hopeful art student, and as part of my degree, I had to submit 1 ring binder folder's worth of coursework each year, which was supposed to document and contextualize my studio work, and it made up a relatively significant percentage of my grade. I liked to decorate the covers of these folders because it was fun for me to do and I thought it looked cute. Towards the end of my first year, I had a one-on-one session with a tutor who was looking through my coursework folder and critiquing my work, etc, etc. And I remember him being really annoyed by this yellow ribbon because it was kind of like, I don't know, there. It was annoying to him, and he made a slightly snarky comment that I wasn't going to get extra marks for decorating my folder, which struck me at the time as pretty condescending. So I asked him if I would get fewer marks for decorating my folder, and he said no, I wouldn't get less marks. So I proceeded to do it again for the next 2 years with increasingly annoying closures. So to commemorate this act of stubborn, pointless decoration, I'm also going to pin this guy up on my mood board, and I'm thinking that the yellow ribbon might be a fun way to reference this in my light switch cover. And with that up there, this now completed mood board is hopefully giving a flavour of what it is that I'm wanting to do. I'm not 100% on my design yet, so I'm going to spend this evening doing some sketches on Illustrator and thinking about what is the best way to go about this. And then tomorrow I can show you the plan and we can get started on the making. So the question is, can I improve on this failed design and make something that's actually going to work for my light switch? I've had a quick head start and thus far I've made this little cardboard thing, which is the basic shape that I need to go around this light switch cover. I have tried to leave enough room around each side this time so that once the paper mache is on, it's not going to be too tight of a squeeze on the switch like this bloody guy was. And now I'm more or less ready to properly start making. But before I do that, let me quickly tell you what I'm actually wanting this thing to look like when it's done. I'm pinching the pink colour from the ceramic light switch that I liked, adding a yellow bow at the bottom to accent that pink and tie back into my folder, and then covering the top in foliage and flowers inspired by my trip to Charleston house. So the whole thing should frame the front of the existing light switch like a little decorative wreath. I thought it would be fun to leave the front of the actual switch exposed, so this is more like a frame rather than a cover. So that's the plan. Let's go. Also, I know I look scraggly as hell today, but I'm leaning into it. I've already started cutting out and doing a little bit of sticking down on my frame here. I sliced it in half so that it's a better depth for the light switch cover, and I added the bow at the bottom, which at the moment is just flimsy cardboard. I've also just started doing some of the more delicate stuff, so I've added a stem here with a couple of leaves. I need to remember that it can't be too delicate because it's going to be paper mache'd over, so that's going to lose some of the definition. I think it's going to look really cute. Let me just show you how it looks on the switch at the moment so you can get an idea. Might not stay. There we are. And the bow kind of fills up some of this vertical space here. It just looks better, I think, on the wall. I'm going to carry on adding some more plants and things around this frame, try and get this all finished and ready for paper macheing in the next couple of days. It really doesn't look like much at this stage, but let me carry on with this and then I'll show you once this guy is covered in even more little bits of cardboard. And we're done. I think this is basically all I can add before the paper mache starts going on. On camera it does seem to look like literal trash right now, but I suppose that is what it is ultimately. What do we think? Is it doing too much? I've moved into my art room because I think I have just enough time today to do a first rough coat of the paper mache over the front of this. Normally with my paper mache projects, I start off with a layer or two of newspaper to strengthen the thing up. But in this case, I'm going to skip the newspaper and go straight to the loo roll. It is quite a delicate design, so I think that the newspaper might flatten it out a bit too much. This is a job for the lazy Susan, I think. Also, it doesn't need to be super strong because it's not going to have any weight on it or anything. So I'm going to get on with this now using loo roll, PVA glue and water. And I know already that this is going to be a very sticky procedure and I look forward to it. So I spent the rest of the day gluing loo roll to these bits of cardboard and trying my hardest not to squish down all of the smaller 3D elements that I'd just made, which was admittedly tricky. I haven't got too long left of a light today, and look at that. You know, at school when you'd screw up some loo roll with some water and then chuck it up on the ceiling, it kind of looks like that at the moment. It's gonna need a lot more layers, front and back, but here is today's progress. It's a few days later and this first bit of paper mache that I started has now dried. Only problem is I wasn't super careful when I was gluing it, and it is now fully adhered to my lazy Susan. So I need to do some peeling before I start the next coat of paper mache and get this unstuck so that I can try it on my light switch. The shape is all still very rough, so I'm not worried about damaging it at all because we're going to go over it many times over. She's crusty and she's beautiful. Let's try this on the light switch before we go any further. Still a good fit. And it's holding itself pretty well on the wall now. You can see that the form loses quite a lot of the definition once the paper mache goes on it. So once I've done enough coats to cover this initial cardboard, I will be going in and adding more kind of 3D details as well with the paper mache, just to make sure that it doesn't look too flat in the background areas. Now I'm just going to carry on with more of the loo roll, paper mache, and get it stuck to this board all over again. It's already an improvement on this. For sure. It's always worth spending a bit of time shredding up some paper before the point when your hands are covered in glue. That's just a tip that I've learned from experience. Now I can just mix together my water and PVA glue and I'm ready to get going. It's a rainy day here in the south of England. I've done a few coats of the paper mache on the front so far, so it is relatively sturdy at this point, although it's going to still need going over a few times and adding detail. When I was paper macheing the ribbon, I propped up some little bits of cardboard underneath this bit here and the ends, so it would give it a nice curved shape. The front does still need more doing to it. I'm going to be adding quite a lot more detail, but for today, I am going to move on to the back because it currently looks pretty scrabbly. And once all of these little gaps and stuff's filled in with the paper mache and that's dried, it will be feeling a lot more like a solid thing. First couple of coats done on the back and I'm done for the day. Now I need to let it dry and I will be back in a few days' time to continue with more. Also, I'm just going to show you this little guy who I'm working on at the same time. He's drying as well. This is just a creepy little doll that I've had for like 10 years. Looks like he's still looking at you. And his outfit was all messed up, so I've made him a little tutu thing. He's holding a ball or something above his head. This is for my Christmas tree. I like making little hanging decorations when I'm bored. I will do some videos closer to Christmas of making various little creepy decorations because it's something I like to do. Drop your thoughts down in the comments of a name for this guy. I've been adding to this on and off. It's probably had 4 layers in various places at this point and it is now fully dry. I have tried it back on the light switch to make sure it still fits and it does. It's a bit of a snug fit, but that's actually okay because it means it's not going to fall off and I think I'm pretty happy with it. I was going to go back in and add some more like raised details to part of these petals and leaves and stuff, but looking at it now I think that's unnecessary and I actually think it will be a better idea to add more detail through the paint rather than going back in with more paper mache because then I've got to wait for it to dry again and I want to get painting. First though, I'm going to give it a quick sand as I always do, just to get rid of any of these extra little lumps and bumps and smooth it down, ready to paint. It looks very nondescript in the white, but I'm hoping once I've got some colour on there, it's really going to come to life and look less like toilet paper. I actually think this would be a cute little craft to do for presents for people. You could easily print out a photo of someone and make this into kind of a hanging picture frame, or use a similar process and do something else. Like if Auntie Mabel really loves her cats, put her face there and all cats going around the outside. That's a cheap little present to make and pretty fun as well. So I might do that for some people, make them some bespoke frames. Or maybe I'll never make anything like this ever again. It's always a toss-up with me. Okay, it's sanded. And it looks identical to how it did before, only it feels a bit different. And will hopefully be keyed better for the paint. Obviously with the paper mache, it does have a slightly waxy finish because of the glue. So if you're going to paint it, it's probably a good idea to sand the surface beforehand so that the paint will adhere better. Probably doesn't make a huge difference, but then you get to do this. Probably really loud. Okay, so time to do the first coat of paint. I do know that this is going to take a few coats of paint and probably some trial and error to decide what colours I want where. So today I'm just going to start by doing the first coat of the base colours. So the yellow bow, the kind of corally pink innards, and then I'll do all of the backing in one shade of green. Then I'll have a better idea of what I'm working into and also be able to pick out the colours for my flowers and other bits. Kind of wanted to do this today because I'm working on a big painting on a canvas, the video of which may come out before or after this one, but it means I've got my paints out, so we might as well do the first coat of this. And also it'll be fun. I like painting 3D objects. I feel like it's quite satisfying. Also, if you're not a very good painter and struggle with things like shadows, painting onto 3D is perfect because it literally has its own shadows. So you don't need to worry as much about that. Though I will do a bit of shading. I don't want it to just be all block colours. You gotta peel the palette before you start to paint. It's not quite thick enough for super satisfying peels. How caked up do you let your paint palette get before you scrape it all off? Or are you someone that cleans their palette off before it dries, just after you've used it? That method does make sense if you have like a mucky sink, but I try not to put too much stuff down my sink from crafting and DIY. You gotta be careful about washing brushes and things and letting that all go down into the plumbing. I mean, acrylic paint is essentially just plastic. Is it not? Okay, so I got way too into that job, but it's now 1/4 hour later. I did both my palettes, they're now clean. Now I can actually paint this thing. It's good to have a little intermission sometimes, I find. Start out with my little fan brush because I'm doing relatively big sections. I'm gonna start with the corally colour, I think. So I'm mixing that with some red, some light pink, some yellow. I don't want the colours on this to be too saturated. I'd rather they be a slightly duller tone. Like I was saying, I was really inspired by the colours of everything at Charleston House and how they were all a little bit dull and desaturated in a nice way. Let's try with this. I've got some smaller brushes for edges and things. I think the fan brush may actually be too big for this job. So this is going to go on all of the insides here, around the edges to kind of these areas. Oh, I'm already started painting it. Accidentally, it is still a little bit bright for my liking, but it's fine because it's only the first coat, so I can dull it down in the future. Painting is often my favourite part of the paper mache process. It's when things start to look a little bit more alive. It looks kind of terracotta on there. The type of pink is correct if it was just a bit lighter. But I'm going to carry on with what I've mixed anyway, so that the first coat is all even. Probably mixed too much, to be honest with you, for the first coat. It's not a huge amount more that needs doing. It also doesn't matter too much if I am getting it on other bits because I'm going to be going over all the other bits anyway, but the neater I am now, the easier future work will be, so I suppose it is worth it. I think that's all the bits that I'm going to do in the pink. Actually, I need to do the back of that. Oops, missed that bit. Okay, I was going to do the yellow bow next, but I have quite a lot of this pink and I don't think I can mix it into a yellow. But I think I can use it for my green colour. Wearing big swoopy sleeves while painting probably is not the best idea. I really don't know much about colour mixing. Like, I know it is a very impressive skill to have. I see people making these videos on TikTok of them like perfectly matching the colour of their knee or something. But this doesn't need to be that exact. That's fine, that'll do. First coat of green done. Like I said, there is going to be variation in this shade of green once I go over it. Kind of giving ham salad sandwich at the moment. Don't know why. Next, let's do this yellow bow. What do you think about light switch covers generally? Do you like them as a concept, or do you prefer your switches to be plain and utilitarian? Now that it's got a bit of pink in its cheeks, I do think it's gonna add kind of a joyful pop to my bedroom wall. So I'm gonna leave this to dry overnight and then come back and do the next layer of paint tomorrow. It's about a week later because I got distracted by another project. But let me show you how our light switch cover is currently looking. I'm liking the yellow bow and this salmony colour, but obviously I need to fix all of this because it's still looking very salady to me. So I want to go back in today, paint all of these flowers, and also add some variation to the greenery as well. All in all though, I think it's super cute. I'm going to start with this flower here because I think I know I want it to be a nice pale yellow. So this is an easy place to start. Every time I do a new paper mache project, I'm just reminded how much you can actually do with it and how surprisingly strong it is. I have had some comments from people telling me different things that they've made with paper mache since watching one of my videos, and that's honestly like the coolest thing. So thank you to any of those people, and if anyone else does any paper mache projects, please do tell me about it and tell me where I can find pictures of them because I would really like to see. Okay, I'm going to carry on with this painting now and I'll show you how it's looking in a wee while. It doesn't look great up close, but it's all about the overall effect, and I think it will come together the more detail I add. This is the bit I've done so far. From far away, it is giving the effect that I wanted it to give. Whoop. I think it's coming along nicely. It's satisfying seeing it with more colour on it. It definitely feels more like it's coming alive. Just got this little corner left now. So I finished off all of the flowers, etc. And now I'm going to go over this salmony colour with a slightly lighter, more muted shade. Then I'll go over my bow and then we'll leave it to dry. It's a new day and we're dry. This is what I ended up doing on the back. I'm pretty happy with it. The pink colour is a little bit less salmony now and a little bit more pinky, but I actually don't care enough to paint over it again. I think I like it. It's more muted, which is what I wanted. The back's painted pretty roughly because it's obviously not going to be seen. And also the front is painted pretty roughly too, if I'm honest with you. And all that's left is to seal it with a coat of my favourite Mod Podge. And this is a fun bit because you can just slap it over the whole thing without thinking too much, and once it's dried it has a lovely glossy finish, which is always satisfying to see. So I'll start on the front, let that dry, do the back, and by that time it will inevitably be too dark to film. So I'll see you again in a few days time to do the final install and reveal shots. So that's something to look forward to. Fully glazed like a donut. And here it is in its final form. Now that it's all sealed and dry, it's feeling even more solid. That sounds like I'm knocking on wood. I think the colours have turned out really pretty, and generally it's just a happy looking thing, in my opinion. It's definitely not going to be to everybody's taste. In fact, I don't know if I can think of a single person who I personally know who would want this in their house. And I can't lie, there is still something hammy about it. Now it's like a ham and cheese salad. These little flat like spam fritter flowers aren't helping. But as I said earlier, this project's kind of about the full effect, not the close-up details. My visit to Charleston farmhouse reinforced anything for me. It's that you should decorate your home to cater to your own taste first and embrace a homemade finish. So that's what I'm going to do with this thing. And now all that's left is to put it up on my light switch. So let's do that now, shall we? The ceremonial wreathing of the switch commences. Do, 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 do. Done. I'm I'm really happy with how this project turned out. Even though it is a small, kind of pointless thing, I do think it adds something special to this wall, and thus it was worth the time spent to make it. Just like covering my uni folders, this act of pointless decoration has achieved its ultimate goal of giving me a little rush of dopamine every time I look at it, which is something that we should not undermine the importance of within a very depressing world. Dopamine is much like Tesco in that every little helps. Since I started this project, I've also been feeling generally much more motivated and inspired to start other things too, and to get going on new projects for this channel. I mentioned earlier in this video that while I've been making this, I have also been working on a painting, which is a slightly rare thing for me to do. I don't often do painting, but that project is nearly finished, so I'm going to have a video up about that relatively soon too. So if you're not already subscribed but you think you might like to see that, please consider subscribing. I would love it if you left me a like or a comment, because they really do help my channel get seen. If not, you just watching this video is amazing, and thank you so much. And that's the end of the video. Goodbye!